Significant.
Welcome to Significant Life, the podcast for women who want to live, lead, and serve from an anchored place. I'm your host, Janice Anderson, wife, mother of three, CEO, and lover of all things Jesus. I firmly believe that strong women need an even stronger support system. So whether you need to get it done or come undone, this is a place where you can do it all without second guessing who you are, disconnecting from those you love, or undervaluing your irreplaceable contribution to the world. Regardless of what you're facing, this I know for sure. You were created to live and enjoy a significant life. Let's dive into today's episode. Ladies, have you ever had one of those encounters with God where it was kind of like a sneak deliverance session? Like he came up from behind, came from the blind side, and bap, delivered you of something you didn't even know was an issue in your life? Oh my gosh, that happened to me. And I wish I was by myself when this happened, but oh no, there was an entire audience. So let me tell you what happened. I was at this conference for women, and I was there specifically to just be refueled. I wanted to, and I'm not a big conference goer, not because I'm above conferences or anything like that, but you can become addicted to those things. Like, if you're not careful, it's like instead of you're looking for your quick fix on Sundays, it's like I'm looking for my quick fix at this conference. And I never want a conference or group experience to replace my private encounters with the Lord. So I'm very particular about when and where I show up for corporate gatherings and experiences with the Lord. I don't forsake the assembly for those of you who are about to chastise me, but I am very cautious that I'm not allowing church to be my addiction of choice or religious activities. Now, back to our regularly scheduled program. So I'm at this event and I go on, when we're getting on the plane, I'm saying to myself, Janice, you're going to attend this event and you're going to receive whatever Holy Spirit wants to reveal to you. You're going to be refreshed. You're going to be refueled. Remember the time very vividly because it was right after a very rough season. A lot was going on in my business and in my personal life, and I just needed a refreshing. And so on the flight over there, I said, Father, refresh me. I give you permission to just remove the titles, remove the roles I play, remove all the responsibilities that I have. And I want my heart to be open to whatever you have for me. But let me tell you something. If ever you pray anything like that, hold on, sister, because listen, God is going to answer you, and he may answer you straightway. So I get to this event and we're in this circle and we're asking questions. They're the question cards. You've seen them now. They're conversation cards. But we're in this event and there are 2,000 women. 2,000 women. And so our group probably has about 20 to 30 women, maybe 20 women in our huddle. And we're going around and they're answering this question. And the questions were passed out and we're supposed to answer them clearly from our heart. So I look at my card and I'm like, look at that question. That's interesting. That don't really apply to me, but okay. And my question reads, what way are you distancing yourself from God? I asked myself, that's interesting. What way am I distancing myself from God? So now if you know me, when I start repeating things, a couple of things are going on. I'm probably stalling because I don't have an answer. And I'm processing as well, but probably more so stalling, but I'm processing and stalling, a combination of the two. So now it's my turn. What ways are you distancing yourself from God? And I'm thinking to myself, me and God, like we real cool. Like I'm his favorite daughter. We're like homeboys and homegirl. Like, that's my dude. I'm not distancing from him. I serve Christian leaders. I have a vibrant prayer time. I mean, like I journal, I read my Bible. I'm not distancing myself from God. And so then I start to read the card aloud because it's my turn. And I remember like it was yesterday. I'm sitting in a circle and I'm reading the card and I'm asking, what ways are you distancing yourself from God? I am distancing myself from God. Y'all remember how they taught us in school to answer a question by using part of the question in the answer so that the person who reads it knows what you're answering? I'm totally leveraging all of those things right now because I was also stalling. So I said, I am distancing myself from God when faced with familiar pain. I distance myself from God when faced with familiar pain. And then I elaborate a little bit. I said, I'm good when God asks me to do something that I've never done before. I'm good when he gives me this challenge that I've never faced before. But what happens is when it's something we've already tried and it hurt, I kind of do double dutch with God. I'm like one toe in and one toe out. And y'all, I lost it. I was like, whenever I face with familiar pain, I was like, oh my gosh, is this happening right now? Is this happening? Like I am losing my composure because it hit me that God, you know what? I thought I gave you everything. I thought I surrendered all to you. I thought if you asked me, I'm like, hey, I'm like Isaiah, send me. Here I am, send me. Except for in the instances that remind me of a familiar pain. I want to ask you, in what ways are you distancing yourself from God? What are you doing? What are you avoiding? What are you ignoring? Because the idea of facing it, the idea of trying it, reminds you of a familiar feeling, and that feeling wasn't so good. Most recently, let me just say this. So that story happened several years ago, lots of years ago, probably, gosh, maybe 10 years ago. I had that experience at that event, and it still rings true even now. I still find myself distancing from the Lord when faced with familiar pain. And the way that I distance myself from him is I am reluctant to take the step. I take a long time to obey. And I heard one time that delayed obedience is still disobedience. And I know in my own life that disobedience is probably the number one way that I distance myself from God. And I know also from my life, I don't know about you. I want you to evaluate your life as you listen to me share today in this podcast. What is your way? What is your story? What is your thing? But in my life, I disobey God when I'm afraid. I'm literally like, OMG, I said it. I'm not regularly walking around like, no, God, I'm not doing that. I don't feel like doing that. Are you crazy? You know, I'm a pretty, at this stage, you know, I've been walking with God for a long time, and he is definitely my father. He's proven himself over and over again to be faithful. And so for the most part, I listen, you know, I do, I obey. But when I'm afraid of the outcome, I might delay a bit. And I had one of those experiences right when I was preparing to record this episode. Yep. I was like praying and thanking God that this was happening and, you know, just kind of settling in and reviewing my outline. And then the Lord just hit me with you had allowed fear to grip you, Janice. What? Yeah, you were gripped by fear. That's why it took you so long to get to this place. See how amazing it's going? See how it's flowing for you? See how you're hearing me and I'm hearing you and it's just rolling off of your tongue? This could have happened a lot sooner, but you allow fear to drive you. You allow fear in the front seat. And I just want to ask you, where in your life are you paralyzed by fear, but masking it by planning? Because see, I didn't even know that I was afraid. I didn't even know. I'm like, I didn't even know I was scared, God. What? You better stop it. I'm afraid. I was afraid. That's what I was doing. I was scared. What was I scared of? I was just planning. I was gearing up to do this episode and getting ready to just do the podcast, not just this episode, but the entire production. And y'all, can I just be honest? Let me just level with you. So for all of you that you're out there and you're like, you are a box checker, listen, you have met your co-sister, fellow box checker. Hey, that's me. I was checking all the boxes. I had tested this show and this idea. I'd already give it a name and I tested it with my audience. They liked it. I even piloted this podcast for 4 straight weeks. 4 weeks, 4 different episodes than what you've even heard. I had already recorded them and emailed them out and had people listening to this podcast. I even upgraded my equipment. Don't tell my husband. Yes, I got newer equipment. Now, let's be clear. There was nothing wrong with my old equipment. It was working fine, but I upgraded the equipment because I told myself I was going to do that, but I just did it a little earlier. I had read and reread my guide on podcasting, and this is a pretty big guide. It's like 300 pages. I reread the thing. Because in my mind, I was justifying my actions by saying, I just want to make sure that I'm adequately prepared. I don't want to do anything half-stepping. God, I'm representing you. I'm representing your kingdom. I'm representing that which you called me to do. And I really don't want there to be any barrier between me and the women you are calling me to serve with this great gift and this message. Y'all, I even took a course on podcasting. I mean, I know I did so much. This is after I tested it for 4 weeks. I hired a team member to help me with the execution. And just in case I had left any stone uncovered, I created and wrote out a plan that is not unlike me. I am a planner by nature, and I'm a strategist by trade. I had written out my entire strategy, communicated it to my team, and there was no reason for me to delay. Do you hear me? No reason. I had everything in place. I even set a deadline, and your girl was sitting still. Do you hear me? Frozen. Not one word was recorded. Not one thing was spoken. I was just frozen. And I kept telling myself, I kept finding new things for me to do. And it wasn't until I received an email probably about a day ago, 24 hours prior to me getting my butt in gear and starting to record these episodes, from my team member letting me know that she was going on vacation. She wanted to remind me, I'm going to be out on vacation and I haven't seen the podcast episodes. And really what she doesn't know is the Lord was using her to say, Janice, you're doing it again. Janice, why aren't you trusting me? Janice, this is a repeat offender in your life. Janice, fear's at the door. And y'all, I almost gave way to fear. Almost gave way to fear. Because for me, fear is my repeat offender. So I've already asked you, where in your life are you distancing yourself from God? But now I want to ask you, what is the number one trigger that causes you to distance yourself from God? For me, it's fear. And it's not so much fear of people. For me, it's fear of familiar pain. It's fear that I'm going to repeat the circumstance again. It's fear that this time is going to be like the last time. And I want to share with you, because when you know what your repeat offender is, what the trigger is that gets you in this downward spiral, or maybe it's just a place of stagnation, when you're able to slow down and to articulate what literally is the enemy of your soul and the enemy of your actions, then you can literally combat it with the truth. Y'all ready? So when I realized that was what was going on, just as I was getting ready to press record, this is unbelievable. I literally was at a point of tears, and I'm back at that point again because Father so gently reminded me of the promise that he made to me in his word. He reminded me of the truth that he promised me concerning my life, found in Proverbs chapter 4, verse 11. And he says this, I'm going to read it in the English Standard Version. I have taught you in the way of wisdom. I have led you in the paths of uprightness. Verse 12. When you walk, your step will not be hampered. And if you run, you will not stumble. Y'all, in the King James Version, it reads like this. I have taught thee in the way of wisdom. I have led thee in right paths, Janice. When you go, your steps will not be straitened. And when you run, thou shalt not stumble. When I studied that scripture, and each time I studied that passage, I'm reminded of the promise the Lord has made me. He says, when you walk, your steps will not be straitened. That word there literally means you will not be restricted. You will not be cramped. And Janice, if you dare run, you will not stumble. And the definition there of stumble means you will not stumble or stagger due to misfortune. I was a little afraid because I can remember the last time I trusted God to do something big for me and to work in a big way through me, through my gifts, through my skills, and through my talents in a new way, like in a way that I was leading instead of me supporting. I ran out of resources. That's just the truth. I ran out of resources. I ran out of finances. I ran out of energy. And listen, let me tell y'all something. When you run out of resources, then you run out of people, because folks love you, but ain't nobody gonna be staying around doing all the work that it takes to pull your vision off just on the strength of please, please, please. At some point, people want something. Especially if they're not bought into the vision and they just hired help. Again, another episode. And I had gotten to a place where I had overextended myself and I was fearing doing that before again. And so because of it, I was like, I don't know, God, like if I take this step, and I didn't even know I was saying it. I didn't even know I was saying it until I got ready to record this episode. I didn't know that I was saying in my heart, and it was demonstrated by my actions, that I am afraid that what happened before will happen again. And the Lord so gently and so graciously reminded me that, Janice, I have led you. This what you're doing, this is led by me. You didn't make this up. This was not your idea. Oh, I'm getting choked up. And I usually have a sticky note on my desk that says, this is God's idea. But apparently I moved it to my board that's to my right, and I need to put it back in front of my face so I can remind myself that this is God's idea. And he's the one that led me in paths of righteousness. He's the one that led me along this way. And he said, when you walk, Janice, your steps will not be hindered. And when you run, you will not stumble. So I can rest in that. Let me go back. Point number 1. Where in your life are you distancing yourself from God? Where are you like, man, God, I'm not really obeying you because I'm too busy. I'm not really obeying you because it's too risky. I'm not really obeying you because I'm afraid. I'm not really obeying you because the naysayers are talking. I'm not really obeying you because you fill in the blank. Where in your life are you distancing yourself from God? And number 2, what is your biggest offender? What is the source and the trigger that keeps you from closeness with God, from obeying God? For me, it was fear. And number 3, what is the promise that you're going to stand on? What is the promise that God made you concerning that thing that you're running away from doing, that you're running away from pursuing, that you're afraid to trust God with? Ladies, as I bring a close to this episode, I just want to say, God is completely trustworthy, and he loves you, and he's got you. And we don't have to distance ourselves from him. We can completely rely on him. Because here's what he told me, and I'm going to share it with you. This time is not like the last time. This time is different. Because this time, you're different. This time, you're not starting from scratch. This time, dear daughter, you're starting from experience. And not only do you have your experience to support you, you have me to guide you and to lead you every step of the way. I encourage you now to just sit with those 3 questions, to answer them, and to make sure you can answer each of them completely. Where are you distancing yourself from God? What is your number one trigger, number one source of offense? Number 3, what is the promise that God is making concerning you in this area of your life? I pray that this episode was helpful. I pray that your heart has been open to truth. I pray that a path was forged for you to connect more deeply with your Heavenly Father. And I encourage you to go and live God's best for your life. But I pray it was helpful in offering you exactly what you need to see and acknowledge, this is where I am right now. This is where I am right now, but I don't have to stay here. I want to let you know that even as I was listening back to this episode in preparation of posting it, I was like, oh my gosh, I realized something. I realized that dealing with fear, whether it's fear of failure, fear of repeating the same thing, fear that you'll be found out, fear that you're not enough, whatever it is, it's not a one-time thing. It's not, oh, I faced my fear. Now I'm over it. I'm fearless, And I know that sometimes, in this society, especially that because we have so many self-help and empowerment gurus and thought leaders, that it's easy for us to think that something is wrong with us if we don't conquer fear once and for all. The reality of it is, while we have power over fear, it doesn't mean that it won't come up again. Fear is something that you want to consistently face and slay in whatever way it comes up. And what I found for myself is, and with my clients, is that just when you feel you're good and a thing comes up, a barrier comes up, you notice a cycle in your life. If you're not careful, you will minimize the possibility that, girl, this is fear coming up. So I created this resource called Face and Slay Your Fear. So it's a way for you to face your fear. So acknowledge, hey, this is what this is. And then slay the fear, obliterate it. I'm going to give it to you for free. Simply go over to mysignificantlife.org/3 for episode number 3. And right in the show notes, you'll see access to this free resource that will help you to take a look at what your fears are, what's coming up for you now, and then help you to actually take a deeper look at how do you know that that's what that is? How do you act? In the episode, remember I said that when fear comes up for me, I tend to overplan. Planning is a good thing. So if I'm not careful, I'll think, oh, I'm just doing a good thing. And I'll never acknowledge, girl, you're really scared. You're really running away from what you know you ought to be doing, what you know your next step is. So if that's you and you would love some guided support, head over to mysignificantlife.org/3 for episode 3, and you'll see in the show notes a way to access my free resource, Face and Slay Your Fear. Talk to you soon.